Sorry, can you hear me now? Shall I start again? Sorry. Welcome to the Finance and Economic Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Bridget Lane, will be chairing the meeting today with my Vice Chairman, Councillor Gareth Knight, and Lucy Bonsher. To my right is the Democratic Services Officer. Can I remind members that the meeting is being recorded and can also be watched as a live stream or later via the SKDC webcast. It would be appreciated if mobile phones could be switched to silent, please. There's no scheduled fire drill today, so if we hear the alarm, please make your way to the nearest exit to the assembly point on the green at the front of the building. If you wish to ask a question or make a comment, please can I request that you indicate by raising your hand. There's going to be a change on the agenda of, we're swapping the items 9 and 10, so it'll go 8, 10, 9, just so that we can get the update for Turnpike Depot, and then those people can leave if they wish. So do we have any public speakers, Lucy, today, please?
No, Chairman, no public speakers have been notified.
And any apologies for absence, please?
No, I believe the whole committee's here.
Thank you. If anybody's got any declarations of interest, you can either declare them now or during the meeting. So we move on to item number 4 and also item number 5. I'm going to take these two together, if I may. These were the minutes from the meeting held on the 26th of November and the extraordinary meeting held on the 16th of January. Does anybody have any points to raise from those minutes? If not, then could I have a proposer? Councillor Harrison proposing and Councillor Sawyer seconding. All those in favour, please. Those against? And abstentions? Thank you. Item 6 and 7 is updates from previous meeting, the 26th of November and the 16th of January. As far as I'm aware, all those actions are completed, but does anybody have any other comments to make on those? No? Okay. We'll move swiftly on then. So, item 8, announcements or updates from the Leader of the Council, Cabinet members or Head of Paid Services. Are there any announcements? No? Okay. So we're now on to item 10. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. So we're moving on to item 10, which is the addendum document that you got sent out. So this one is over to you, Councillor Baxter, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I'm delighted to present the Finance Update Report for April to December 2024. Thank you very much to the officers that have put this together and also those that have been working diligently throughout the year to put us into such a strong financial position. The report, because of the way that the meeting schedule has fallen, the report was approved by Cabinet last Tuesday, the 11th of February, and it presents the forecast position for the current financial year at the end of December. As you know, we're nearly at the end of the civic and financial year for the Council, so this is the final forecast before the outturn position for the financial year is confirmed. Overall, the authority is in a very strong financial position, let's just say strong financial position with positive variances for both the general fund and the housing revenue account. Investment income continues to perform above budgeted levels because investment interest rates are higher than anybody expected at this time. So we've been able to secure good investments at rates above budgeted levels. However, there are 4 other factors which mean that our income is performing strongly. These are car parking, where we have faith in Councillor Cleaver's car park strategy. We've given away some free car parking before Christmas, and we have changed the tariffs at car parks around the place. We've given an hour's free parking here and there. Nevertheless, income is performing strongly in car parking, and also in planning fees, which I guess means we've got lots of people that either have got plans, successful or unsuccessful, but they pay us either way. And budget assumptions for fuel and salaries were set at levels higher than the actuals. Fuel costs are lower than anybody expected due to a bit more stability around the world, and the salary negotiations ended up with kind of a good salary increase for our staff, but not as high as budgeted. There has been a need to reclassify expenditure for both the General Fund and the Housing Revenue Account, which was originally intended to be capital, but is revenue expenditure in nature. Therefore, some of the overspends in both capital programmes is being offset by overspends in the revenue budgets. But this all balances out, so there is no overall financial impact. Finally, a risk register is included which highlights the main financial risks the Council is facing, along with the mitigating controls that are in place to control them. We spent a little bit of time at Cabinet talking about this and trying to understand it. The red risk, which is on page 15, item 1, although it's a very high risk in the opinion of officers, it's actually 3 years away and dependent on various different things. So it's not an imminent catastrophe, it's something later, maybe one day. I'm happy to take any questions on this report, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have... Oh, Councillor Sawyer.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. For Councillor Baxter, of course. Actually, are there any indications yet of what will happen to SKDC's money under so-called reorganisation?
As I understand it, and obviously it's not covered in this monitoring report, as I understand it, it's not just going to be all put into one big pot to be shared out generally, because some bits are earmarked. We got some feedback from Northamptonshire, which is a good, well, an example. I wouldn't say it's a good example because the reason for reorganising was bankruptcy, and we're not in that situation. But things like the Housing Revenue Account were kept separately and are still separate. Even now, they haven't quite merged them together, and there were various pots which weren't shared around because it's different people's money. But I don't know if Mr. Wiles has a different opinion. There is a risk that if we spot that our reserves were to be shared among the whole of the new larger authority, then there could be a kind of dash to spend. I look at it a bit like if you go out for a meal and at the start of the meal you are told either we're sharing the bill or we're not sharing the bill. If we're sharing the bill, then everybody behaves differently. I'm not saying how I would behave in that situation, but it's my understanding that it's a little bit more nuanced than that. That's our favourite word, isn't it? So, Mr. Wiles?
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, my understanding is not particularly that clear, but the working assumption would be that all the respective balance sheets and the financial structures of each of those councils would be amalgamated over a period of time, because ultimately you're condensing X number of councils into one new council, so logically everyone would pool their resources. I think the HRA is a peculiarity. It sits slightly on the fringe of that because of the ring fencing rules that are around those, and the fact that each council will have legacy debt through the abolition of the self-financing, when self-financing was introduced and the subsidy system was abolished. So I think that's why Northampton has still got individual arrangements for their HRA authorities, but of course for this council it depends on who we ultimately end up with, because they may not have HRAs themselves, so that's still to play for. But I guess simplistically there will be consolidation of everybody's finances, be it their debt levels, their reserves, their balances, their liabilities, and then ultimately one balance sheet will be the outcome of that.
Did you want to come back on that, Max?
If I may, Chairman, I asked the question because some councillors may have seen a graphic I sent round a few days ago that shows quite clearly there is a huge variation in council debt. Now, I accept Councillor Cleaver's point he made to me that it's possibly an oversimplification, but there were two maps, one showed overall debt and one debt per resident, and the variation is, I wouldn't say it is incredible, but it is absolutely huge, including councils, authorities that we may be merging with. So it is a concern of mine.
Councillor Whittington.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. If I maybe to provide some clarity on this, actually. I don't know if members and officers are aware that there's a report that PricewaterhouseCoopers prepared about a year ago where they looked at 3 areas that had previously had the county and district model that then became unitary. And were sort of looking at how the process had gone and what were the issues. And overwhelmingly, the biggest issues were around the amalgamation of the balance sheets. And it's this kind of issue that Councillor Sawyer has raised. And they're still in the situation many years down the line where something they thought they could sort out in a matter of a couple of years, they're still 3, 4, 5 years later, still going through a lot of these issues. I'll try and find the link to the report and send it around because I think it will provide some useful background information because overwhelmingly it was the balance sheets and the negotiations around debt and reserves and all that sort of stuff that caused the majority of the issues. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That's really useful and interesting. I know you want to come in, Councillor Stevens, but I need to take committee members first, okay? So, Councillor Green.
Thank you very much, Chair. So investment income, as the leader already alluded to, is substantially higher than I think we felt it would be a couple of years ago even, so that represents a dividend. Are there any plans to use that? How might we deploy that additional funding that's come through off the back of the higher interest rates? I'd be really keen to understand what those might be. And I suppose just on the local government reorganisation question, I mean, it's entirely possible that when all is said and done, a new structure is imposed by the Secretary of State and the Labour government that might not be to the present administration's liking. In that instance, there might be an incentive to engage in a scorched earth strategy with our reserves, spending those rather than gifting them to a new administration that may be of a different political hue, for example. Can that strategy be excluded? Thank you.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. So to answer the second question first, I'm surprised that you're suggesting a scorched earth strategy, Ben. I don't think that would be sensible, and it may have been the way that people have treated the finances of this council in the past, but certainly it's not our attitude. Our attitude is to spend money well for the residents of South Kesteven, mindful that things may change. And you're absolutely right, the government may inflict a model onto us that isn't our favourite. That's life. And it kind of answers Councillor Sawyer's question early on about his hesitation about authorities that have got higher or lower levels of debt and so on. We have to work within the framework that is being put forward, even though it's a little bit ambiguous. I mean, we couldn't choose an authority up in the far north or the far south that we thought had better financial situation than we have. We're obviously going to end up with our immediate neighbours in one direction or other. So the second question from Councillor Green was about the enhanced income from investments. We're going to use it prudently, as should have been done in years gone by. We're not planning to buy any industrial parks and turn them into some kind of housing commercial development thing. We are investing in a depot, which is budgeted for, but where we have a windfall, if that's what you want to call it, we'll be spending it in the best interests of people in South Kesteven, which we are already doing, in that we've already refurbished Earlsfield Community Centre and Beedon Park, which are both in the poorest or the most deprived ward in the district that has had virtually nothing spent on it in the decades previous. We're also investing in our leisure centres. Leisure SK is now on an even footing after some considerable financial turmoil, but we're investing in solar panels on the roof of the brand new customer service centre that we've launched recently. We're putting solar panels onto the Mears Leisure Centre. We're upgrading. We have done the roof at Bourne Leisure Centre. We're fixing the wave machines at Bourne and Stamford. So yeah, we are investing. We are fixing the roof, and it's not, the sun is not even shining. It's still quite overcast, but we are fixing the roof that had been left unfixed for so many years. So this investment income, some of it may be put into reserves for a time, but we're going to look after our assets properly.
Okay, Mr Wiles, and then I have a queue of people which I'll read out in a moment. So,
Just to make the point that the investment income is driven not only by better interest rates than we had forecast, bearing in mind that we would have set that forecast in October 23, so there's a massive time lag between the budget's being set and the reality, but also because you'll see in the budget report that we're underspending on the capital programme. So 10 million less on our general fund and 3 million less on our HRA is our current forecast. So clearly, if our cash balances are higher than we would have anticipated, then clearly we've got more money in which to invest. So it's not only driven by investment rates, it's also driven by our balances at any particular time. My personal view on any underspends at year end and any additional income, we'll put that in front of both Cabinet and the Governance and Audit Committee and make recommendations about where we feel that money will be better used. And as I think has been mentioned, the short-term recommendation will be to put it into our local priority reserve. When we meet with Council next week to discuss our budgets, members will see a continual reduction in our reserve balances, and that's because we are using them to fund our capital expenditure in lieu of borrowing, which is the point was made earlier about borrowing being quite excessively high at the moment, over 6%. So our recommendation will be to replenish those reserves, in which we can then use to fund future capital spend. Thank you.
thank you. So I've got Councillor Whittington, then Councillor Cleaver, then Councillor Turner, and then it's back to you, Councillor Stevens. Okay? So, Councillor Whittington.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Getting to the point of, I can find very little wrong with this finance report. It is very good. It's encouraging to see that we are forecast to be underspent at the year end, especially when you consider that across the country there are a large number of councils, increasing number of councils that are expressing the fact they may soon need to issue a Section 114 notice. So it's really great to see that we're not in that position, because there are a lot out there now, and it's changing, because previously the councils that got themselves into financial difficulties were councils that had done something external to the traditional workings of a council. They'd invested in housing companies, they'd invested in things outside their district. Just got to look at the issues in Slough and Croydon and Nottingham. So yeah, and in terms of the point that Councillor Baxter made, I actually agree with him. Council should not be getting involved in things that like private companies. And when in the previous administration, I was on the Governance Committee, I did raise the same concerns that Councillor Baxter was raising. This is not stuff that Council should be doing. And actually, I was really pleased that when I had the Cabinet role for the environment, I brought Environment SK back in-house. Because it's proof that councils that have gone into difficulties have been doing things they shouldn't have been doing and have come a cropper as a result. So I'm really pleased that we are pulling away and we're not going down this route, because councils should not be getting involved in stuff they're not expert in. So I think that's really encouraging. I'm really pleased with the answer to the previous question that investment income, any surpluses will go into reserves. That's an entirely financial and prudent thing to do. As I say, I always come to the basis that I've been an officer in local government, I've been in accounts, retired. Looking at this stuff, this council is financially sound, and I'm quite prepared on it, and I'm not going to be churlish about it. This council is in a very sound financial position based on this report. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Whittington, for that. Councillor Cleaver.
Thank you. Just to pick up a little bit on the point made about our future and what happens to money when there is a new authority. I think scorched earth is a very inappropriate phrase because it implies destruction. I don't think anyone actually means that we want to destroy anything at all. In terms of, that doesn't mean, however, that we do not wish to protect our assets in any future and their long-term future. And therefore we will continue to invest to make sure that those assets are strengthened and are in a good position. And we'll see that in the maintenance strategy later on in this agenda. And I will elucidate that further. But yes, you know, we have reserves. We need to use them wisely to protect our asset base.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Thank you. When this current administration came into power, there was a large deficit on gas safety checks, electrical safety checks on our council property stock, and there were a lot of properties that were in need of some regeneration. Could you enlighten us as to how we've got on with that programme since we took over as a regime, and whether the extra funds that we now gain through extra interest and lack of having to pay out so much for fuel and wages, are we on target? Are we on programme? Is there still a deficit, or where are we with that, please, Councillor Baxter?
Thank you. We're obviously not in Housing Committee, but I'll do my best. Chair of Housing Committee is here to fill in the gaps if necessary. You're quite right. It was only shortly before the election of 2023, before Councillor Cleaver's regime and then mine, that we were in special measures and we were failing on gas safety checks and electrical safety and so on. That's all within the HRA. So the investment income, I don't know the split of investment income between the HRA and the general fund. Mr Wiles can fill in that gap if necessary. But I don't think it was so much of a lack of funding that was keeping us in such a situation. It was just the lack of attention and management. Yes, we are in a much better place. Void turnarounds have gone down significantly by many days, although they are still too high. Repairs are, I can't remember what the figures are for repairs, but we're getting on far better with repairs, partly because we've taken on a new contractor, which means that we've got two contractors going at it rather than just one, and therefore the speed with which repairs can be done is better, which leads to even quicker turnarounds of voids. Far better that we get the voids turned around and repaired so that people have got decent houses to live in. And then the checks, we are up to date. Last time I saw the data, which is fairly recently, 100% up to date on gas and electrical safety checks, Legionella, everything else. The only households where we're not up to date with gas, electric or any other checks are the houses where the tenant has refused us access to do those checks, and we've had to spend public money to go to court to gain access to properties that we own for the safety of our tenants, which is a bizarre place to be, but hey, we're working within the law. We're working with people that we're trying to get into people's homes. I don't know if Lee or Richard want to add anything.
Just in terms of investment income, Table 5 does confirm the investment income is also benefiting the HRA as well. So the forecast on the investment income for the HRA is similarly buoyant. basically the cash balance is a lump sum, and then we'll pro-rata it between the two funds depending on their level of reserves that contributes to the overall pot. So it's pro-rated in that way. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you for that, and thank you, Ashley, for being able to answer that question, even though we're not in the Housing Committee. Thank you, Councillor Stevens, for being so patient. Now over to you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cleaver slightly covered this matter, but it strikes me that it's almost inevitable when we have this reorganisation and we're consolidating into some unwieldy, inefficient mega council, that our funds will be effectively appropriated or misappropriated by this larger council. Therefore, there's quite an argument for accelerating any capital expenditure programmes while we still have control of events. And that is what I would exhort the council to do. So council houses in particular, improvements which Councillor Baxter was talking about, and that sort of thing. So whilst we're in control of our money, let's spend it wisely before some other council spends it unwisely. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Councillor Sawyer?
Thank you again, Chairman. Picking up on Councillor Stevens' point, and to some extent Councillor Green's, were I in government, I would look to introduce legislation that would prevent well-run councils like ours from spending money so it's available to bail out profligate councils at reorganisation. But I'm sure those who are more learned in financial matters than I have considered that as a possibility. But it only takes a stroke of a ministerial pen to put the block on certain aspects of our expenditure.
Thank you, Councillor Sawyer. I think from Mr Wowell's perspective, he still has to run a balanced budget until anything changes with any authorities that are going to change with us. That is something that he has to do as part of his job. Councillor Steptoe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me. With the greatest of respect to the committee, we're meandering all over the place. This item is a financial update for April to December. And then there's all this speculation about local government reorganisation and a scorched earth policy, which, yeah, I won't comment further on that. Unreal that it was made. I'll leave it there. So, can we get, again, with the greatest of respect, Madam Chair, can we get back to the agenda, please?
Thank you, Councillor Steptoe. So, if there's no more questions on this, then this is just for noting, and we can move forward on to agenda item 9. And for this, we have representatives from Lindum, who are actually going to show us some slides before the report is given to us. So, over to these gentlemen here, please.
Good morning all. My name is Tom Damerel. I'm the CM for Lindum Construction. This is Tom Seneschal, who's the QS for Lindum Construction on this project. Just a quick overview of Turnpike Close, how we're progressing. This is an aerial shot of the site as we took over. It highlights some of the difficulties faced on the construction of this. We have a tree and plant protection zone on the east side of the site with bee orchids, which were of particular interest. The stockpile of materials won from the demolition of the former factory, the existing site entrance and the interface with the roads there, and the existing tarmac car park. And that was taken in October before we commenced our works. In November, when we began the site, the first thing we did was we repaired all the palisade fencing to secure the site, disconnection of the existing electrical supply, and relocation of the materials during the cut and fill exercise. Installation of our security systems, and we added, before we had the power supply, we had our solar powered carbon zero welfare installed. Later on in November, you can see the change to site as the levels have been brought up and compacted in layers. Rationalisation of the stockpile, so we're using the site wood material. We're laying it down in layers, compacting it, making sure that it's in accordance with the material management plan. Here we can see the full site welfare setup is in place, and the tarmac road is now removed, crushed and taken from site. Into December, again the site boundary treatment's been taken, so we've recycled the materials, reallocated it to the site. The new substation base has been installed at this point, and the formation of the access road has taken place. Again, start of January, we've begun the excavation for the drainage runs in those points, excavation for the attenuation tank, procurement of the drainage materials, and we can see that there's a bit of snow on the ground there, which actually prevented us from starting the foundations earlier in the year, but we've managed to crack on with the drainage in lieu. These are some photos of the attenuation tank, which shows you just how big a tank it is. It's 42 metres long and 7 metres deep. Gives you a bit of scale of the works involved. And the pouring of the foundations, which has happened, you can see that's the main building. Foundations have been cast there. And some of this deep drainage, those drainage is very deep because it runs from the north of the site all the way down to the south. You can see the installation of the manholes and the manso systems on there. And in the next period, there's a visual of the steel building. The steel will be erected in the next period. We're going to dig the foundations for the store building, commence the southern 278 works, and install the interceptors, which you can see. Again, these interceptors have been reviewed, rationalised as part of the build. We've gone for 2 bigger interceptors rather than the 5 smaller ones, just to make sure that we've got capacity. And this is the 3D models of, this is the aim of what we're going to be constructing. So you can see the wider site. I don't know if there's any questions.
Thank you for that. Very interesting. Councillor Johnson and then Councillor Sawyer.
Thank you. That was very interesting. Just 2 questions. One, are we on target? And are we on budget?
Yes, we're currently aiming to hand over as per the programme, and the budget is on budget.
Councillor Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman. Tom, could you run through what's certainly for me, the operation of the attenuation tanks, please?
The attenuation tanks is a crate system, and what it means is that the drainage, the surface water drainage, all runs to those attenuation tanks. That stores water in situ rather than discharging straight, so it basically reduces the amount of water discharging straight into the system. It holds it, and it's got a restricted flow rate, so it enters the system at a slower rate, so basically prevents flooding.
What about disposal of contaminated water, which there will be some on the site?
Yeah, the interceptors shown will separate the waste, the foul or the contaminants from the water. That will be then removed at intervals, and the water then can be clean water.
Thank you, Tom. Councillor Green.
Thanks, Chair. I am aware that the existing site entrance is being used as a bit of an unofficial overnight lorry park. Is that causing you any headaches at all, or are those guys largely behaving themselves?
No, it's not an issue at the moment. We've spoke to people, but as and when we commence the works in there, we will fence it off, but at the moment it's not causing us an issue.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison and then Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Chair. What, if anything, have we lost through value engineering?
There isn't anything in terms of specification loss. What we've done is rationalised some of the concrete yard. we've been able to reduce the amount of concrete in the slab by increasing the amount of stone. So not only does it reduce the amount of carbon in that, it saves us, because the yard is so big, it actually saves us quite a lot financially. And everything else has been just rationalising and making sure that it hits the spec, and I think reusing the stone on site has saved an awful lot, rather than paying to cart it away and getting some more in.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Turner.
Thank you. Have you completed a similar type installation in another place? And it seems like you've broken the back of it now, i.e. the groundworks are done. So do you expect, is there anything that might hold us up or cost more money or lead to a overextension of the time deadline that might happen, for example?
I personally have only carried out one project similar, but as a company we've done a number of these. I agree with you. Now that we're out of the ground, now the tank is in, the unknowns are known, so there shouldn't be anything to surprise us now that those are all sorted.
Councillor Sawyer.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Tom, again, regarding the solar panels, what percentage of the site's power requirement will they supply? Is there battery backup? And have you allowed for the fact that in a year, solar panels are likely to be twice as efficient as they are now?
I don't have those figures with me to know whether there is the percentage of the power being used. There is capacity. The solar power panels are located on the main building. There is capacity on the store building if in the future to increase the number of solar power panels, if they're more efficient and more cost effective in a year's time, then additional panels may be added into that area and brought into the system.
Battery backup?
Off the top of my head, I can't remember whether there is battery backup on this one. I don't know.
I think we're looking into a generator rather than battery backup for disaster recovery, essentially. In terms of battery backup, I don't think that was specified.
Okay, thank you very much for providing us with those slides. Very interesting. And now over to you, Councillor Cleaver, for the report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to present this report. I think all the questions that might have come up have already been covered off, so I don't feel I have a lot left to say, except to point out that we are on target for completion. We are on budget. The risk register shows only low risks, low or closed risks. So at the moment, all is good, and I look forward to reporting to you at your next meeting. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions to Councillor Cleaver at all? If not, then we will swiftly move on. This report is only for noting, so thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. And thanks for attending, both gents. Thank you. Okay, so we move on to agenda item 11, the maintenance strategy action plan update. So again, over to you, Councillor Cleaver, please.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to present this report. I hope that members of the committee, in fact all members of the council, are aware of how important this is to me as the cabinet member, but also how important it is to us as a council that we have properly maintained assets. It's something that needed a lot of attention when we came into office, and I'm really pleased to be able to report that we are making very good progress with it. There's a number of points that you will see in the report which stand out. One of them is the gas consumption levels at 2.21, which are very interesting, and I would like to reassure the committee that we are looking into the operational usage patterns of the buildings, particularly where there is a massive increase in gas use, particularly Grantham Bus Station and here at SK House. We are doing plant reviews at both locations to establish if there are any mechanical means to isolate areas when rooms are not in use, and a review of the energy efficiency of those facilities is being undertaken. So that hopefully will reassure you that we are going to address that issue. As point of explanation on the categories A, B, C, D on section 2.8 of the report, I would point out that it's not a whole building that is classified as A, B, C or D. Every building will have some A, some B, some C, and hopefully not any D. Okay, so the classification doesn't apply to a building, it applies to what is needed in every single building. So these are spread across. And you will notice further down on section 2.11 that we have a current backlog estimated at 5.355 million for rectifying the category C needs and requirements. That is a lot of money for a council of our size, and it's something that we are not going to walk away from, and accordingly, on top of the fact that we have a revenue budget of 1.1 million, which is referred to in the following paragraph, Cabinet last week adopted a recommendation to full council as part of next year's budget that we earmark £2.2 million of reserves to buildings maintenance from the local priorities reserve, and obviously that will be debated in full council. It's obviously not on the agenda for today, but I wanted you to be aware of it because I want you to be aware of the fact that we take that £5.355 million backlog very, very seriously, and we are not going to sit and not do anything about it because it's very important to us. And I'm pleased to say that work on this maintenance strategy is continuing and progressing, and hopefully will be fully complete very shortly. I don't know if Mr. Teasdale would like to add anything, or Mr. Wiles, to that. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, just to obviously point out, the maintenance strategy was provided back in, I think it was September last year, and from that we developed an action plan. As part of the appendix, there's a review of the maintenance action points 1 to 8, which gives a bit of a description and advice on the actions taken so far and how we're progressing with those. So action point 1 was the carrying out of all the condition surveys across the portfolio. That action has been completed now, and we are into the stages of updating that information onto the system to develop programming. So obviously from that we've been able to develop the estimations that are contained within the report to bring forward a programme of works across the next short-term, medium-term and long-term, and we're hoping, well, the figures obviously have identified £6 million just under backlog maintenance, which as we work through that will look to continue to reduce in the short term. Over the long term we're looking at approximately £25 million estimate over the next 25-30 years of investment requirement into the portfolio to maintain it in good condition. So that's action point 1. In terms of action points 2 and 6, we've continued to progress with undertaking routine visual inspections of the properties and also any compliance inspections. We've input a asset management system which officers are now using to schedule inspections and ensure we're meeting those targets of frequency. So that's ongoing again, as we will need to continue to carry out those inspections going forward. In terms of action point 3 and 4, we sort of combine those in terms of the whole life costings and undertaking a utilities audit. We carry out monthly audit meetings with our energy officer to monitor our consumption usage. And so we're continually monitoring how much we're spending and trying to identify ways to improve, obviously, the prime expenditures. And I think the report shows some good savings we've made in terms of gas consumption, particularly. I know Richard's outlined, obviously, some increases which are on our radar, but there's also some good savings there where we've, such as the Guildhall, where we've replaced the boilers there, which were old and obsolete, and now we've made considerable saving on consumption there. Also the same in the Bourne Corn Exchange, where we've replaced boilers there as well. That has been set back slightly in terms of the whole life costings element because we've had to prioritise action point 7, which is the asset tagging process. In implementing the asset management system for officers to use and identify works and program those, we've had to bring that forward as that forms part of the base data to facilitate those programs, and so that has been prioritised, and there's been a slight revised timescale on those actions in Appendix 1 to facilitate that, but we don't anticipate a prolongation of the programme from that. And then also, just finally, pick up on action point 8, we currently manage a range of investment portfolio. Obviously, this is occupied by tenants, and we don't have necessarily the compliance responsibility depending on the lease terms on those, but we've outsourced the management and inspection of those to a company called Edison's, who will be carrying out landlord inspections on our behalf and monitoring tenants are meeting the compliance and requirements of their lease in terms of the repair and maintaining our buildings.
Thank you, Giles. There is no doubt, that this is a massive piece of work that is ongoing, and obviously there's large projects which also take up an awful lot of time to sort out. So over to questions now. Councillor Whittington, you had your hand up first. So.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. 2 questions. First one is concerns around the gas consumption figures, and why it's great to see they've dropped overall. I'm a little concerned about the 2 at sort of Mobeck House and the bus stations, and Stamford Arsenal is also up as well. And in the narrative, you say that this is understood to be down to changes in operational arrangements. Are we definitely certain that that's what it is? Do we know the reasons? And and are we able to take any mitigation around those changes to operational arrangements? It's my first question. And my second question concerns the actual nature of the maintenance work itself. Presumably, will we be doing this on a sort of, because obviously we'll be dependent upon external contractors to do it. Will we be doing it on an ad hoc basis, or will we try to bundle up the work that needs to be done into larger packages where we may be able to get more efficiencies from the contract negotiations? Thank you.
Mr. Wiles?
I mean, just in terms of the gas table at 2.21, which obviously is quite revealing. I mean, this is relatively new work that we're investigating along with the electricity consumption, because as already been said, there's a lot of legacy historical bad practice, if you like, that's in a lot of these buildings that we're now dealing with. Grantham Bus Station is of concern because I don't know if people are familiar with it, but whilst we've got occupancy upstairs, which is by centre bus under a lease arrangement, largely the building sits redundant, but it is on a single feed system and it's still the original boiler from when that building became operationally live, which is now 40 years ago. So it's not, no surprise, it's quite an inefficient system that will need some level of investment over the next few years. We're just in the process of renegotiating the lease because it's a leased asset, it's not an owned asset by the council, but until such time as that lease is agreed, it would be premature of us to start investing in that asset at this particular time. Mobeck Way is another good example, but as members know from the previous agenda item, the writing's on the wall in terms of our occupancy of that particular site. And hopefully by November 25 we have relocated away from that site, and then it'll start to fall into a level of void, and other options will be presented to members as to what the future of that site should look like. So again, there seems little point in investing in that particular location for those reasons. I think some of the other assets we've tried to invest in technology that's either energy efficient but having to accept that some of these buildings are very complicated by their very nature, particularly the art centre buildings, Victorian and Georgian. They don't lend themselves easily to modern, particularly non-fossil fuel type solutions. So there is an acceptance we can put investment in, but the payback may not be the same as if we can invest in different parts of technology. Going back to the point about bundling up the packages of work, that's very much the work that we're now moving into, where there are certain standard categories of disrepair that we could put to a single contractor to undertake a holistic investment programme, rather than trying to manage multiple contracts with multiple contractors, which is obviously very time consuming in itself. So yes, we're trying to package the works into common themes and common lots that we can then go to the market with and package those up accordingly. But that is obviously quite a big undertaking as well. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter, did you want to come in?
Yes, I just wanted to bring Councillors' attention to the decision that was made at Cabinet last week, that you'll know that the budget for next year has a maintenance. We were proposing a maintenance reserve additionally of £1 million to deal with some of the backlog maintenance. We're now increasing that, or we're proposing to increase that to £2 million to deal with the backlog reserve. However, the issue is not necessarily with the money, it's with the capacity of the industry. You don't find many people like Giles around that can help with that capacity. It's a market where trying to find the people to plan and to schedule and to do the works is relatively limited. So even though we're increasing the amount of money available for backlog maintenance, so that our assets are in the best possible condition as we go into the new organisation of local government, we're not necessarily got the bandwidth to spend it. And that leads on to mentioning, to show that we haven't forgot it, Councillor Sawyer, the local works framework. We haven't yet got a local works framework. It's definitely our intention to create one, but I don't know how far the finance team have got, or the procurement team have got, in terms of creating that place where we can go to local suppliers to do smaller works alongside the Lindhams and everybody else of this world.
Mr Wiles?
Just on that particular item, there are two Meet the Bar events. One took place in Stamford at the end of January. The next one is in Grantham across the way this Thursday. But what I would say is that some of the scale of these works will not lend themselves to local tradespeople, mainly because the procurement thresholds will probably preclude those sorts of activities. And going back to the point Councillor Whittington said, we want to maximise the money that may be available to us to make sure we get the best return from it. So that if we bundle up larger pieces of work, unfortunately that will take some of the local supply chain out, but nevertheless the Meet the Bar events are really helpful to connect into local networks, where if it is responsive repairs we're looking for, and immediate responses, then the local workforce is ideal for that. But some of these larger scale investments, as Councillor Cleaver said, in excess of £5 million, unfortunately that we are looking at probably national frameworks to secure some of that kind of activity. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Sawyer.
Thank you, Jen. The government has confirmed that gas will be part of the UK's energy set up for years to come. It's increasingly sympathetic towards North Sea gas extraction. 10 years of gas have been discovered underneath Lincolnshire, and the Ukraine war is likely to end in the foreseeable future, all of which will result in a reduction in the price of gas. Is it wise to move away from gas as our energy source to the extent that we are doing?
Do we have somebody that could answer that question? Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. I hadn't realised that the Ukraine war is likely to end shortly. I must have missed that. This council is not in a position to affect either national policy on gas, nor decisions to get the alleged gas from under the ground in Lincolnshire, nor do we have any impact on North Sea. What we do know is that renewable solar, we know that the sun is going to be generating energy for a long time to come, and so any shift away from fossil fuels to solar, notwithstanding the technique and technologies and the origin of those technologies for where we get it from, but basically solar is going to be around for a lot longer than gas by any measure, and to continue to be dependent on fossil fuels, in my opinion, is a big mistake when there are other fuels available.
Did you want to come back, Councillor Sawyer?
Simply to say I have a different opinion, but of course in the politest possible way.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
I think it's important, whilst talking about where we get our energy from or how it's produced, that we are trying to go net zero, so any reduction in gas use, oil is desired. Any carbon-based fuels, we should be phasing them out where we can.
Thank you for that. So if there are no further comments, then this report is for noting. There is no doubt that this has been a real positive step to have a maintenance strategy. So I just want to pass on my thanks to Giles and Richard and the team that have worked really hard at getting this in place and taking it forward. And I realise what such a big job it is. So thank you very much to them for that. Okay, we move on to agenda item 12, which is UK Shared Prosperity Fund update. So over to you, Councillor Reynolds. Welcome to the committee.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and apologies for my late arrival. I think everybody knows that the UK SPF was yielding 3.7 million over 3 years, and it closes, as I understand it now, at the end of March of this year. The money has to be spent by then, so it's coming up to an end. I'll briefly comment on potential for next year at the end of this little speech. But it closes in March. The Rural Fund is a separate top-up fund that came in, as well as the UK SPF fund, which we have. Any unspent money would return to central government at the end of March if we were unable to demonstrate that it had been properly spent. At the moment, the UK SPF fund is over-allocated by £21,000, but the Rural Fund is under-allocated by £98,000. But there are funds, a lot of funds so far not yet drawn down, and we are chasing, or the staff are chasing, this work in order to make sure that it is properly drawn down, and they recognise that some people are at risk. And at this stage, I think it's appropriate to say what a wonderful job Emma and particularly Alice and other people as well, but have done, because they've taken over the management of this fund at short notice over the last few weeks because of illness, and have spent a lot of time and effort sorting it out, or making sure it was all spent by the end of the March. There's a week-by-week supervision of all the issues at the moment. There is funds that can be transferred into the Rural Fund so that the Rural Fund will not be undersubscribed at the end of the process. And there are funds or works projects being identified which can move into the UK SPF fund when we are clear about what funds are at risk. Funds at risk, I'm talking about people where the funds have been allocated but they may not be used fully by the end of the project. It's expected by the end of the period that the allocation will be complete and that we will not be in a position to send stuff back to the government, which is not what we really want. So the UK SPF and our EAPF fund must be spent by the 31st of March. All outstanding projects where funds have been committed but not fully drawn down are being closely monitored. Where funds are unable to be spent by the grant recipient, it will and can be reallocated to other projects in accordance with the UK SPF Board decision of the 27th of January, which allowed that to happen. The report is for noting, and it is expected that the funds allocated to the Council will be fully expended. Just to comment on next year, it would appear that we perhaps get £1.2 million from the fund for next year, but that will have to be allocated much more quickly than in the past by September, and we will have to streamline the process in which we do this in next year to make sure that we're not quite as tight at the end of the month, the end of the year, as we are on this year. So we'll be looking at the process and seeing in which way we can streamline it and make it more efficient. I ask you to note the report, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knowles. Councillor Whittington.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chairman, and thanks, Councillor Knowles, for the report. My only concern really is around the table at 2.5. The fact that we've committed 3.9 million. There's only been just over £1 million actually spent. I mean, that's still an awful lot to chase through, and I know that you said the team are working hard, but I'm a little uncomfortable at the disparity between those two figures, because especially the tightness we now are to the end of March, and I just need a little bit of reassurance around that. I'm not doubting that everybody is working really hard on this and chasing and closing it down, but somebody sort of coming in and looking at it from outside, as it were, it does give me a bit of a cause for concern. So I'd appreciate a little bit more reassurance that by the year end, you know, as far as possible, the money can, and I know we're dependent upon the people we've given the money to, but it is a bit of a concern to me at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Emma, are you able to help with that, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I can. So the figures that are presented in the papers today were the figures as of the end of January. As Councillor Knowles has already said, we're having regular updates with the finance team, and they're about to do their latest update in terms of the payment vouchers that have been sent out. So that's the funds that have been transferred to applicants, and also updates where applicants have perhaps confirmed they're not able to meet the deadline. Just looking at some of the initial data, I can see there's at least £300,000 or £400,000 plus that we've already handed out since that update, and there will be more. I just don't have that sort of figure today, so we can provide those updates, but please be assured, committee members, that I'm issuing payment vouchers almost daily at the minute to make sure those funds are released. So those figures are not, they're, in that sense, they're out of date, but they are the latest financial position. Thank you.
Councillor Whittington, did you want to come back?
Yeah, thank you. No, thank you. If I may just ask a follow-up question. It was said that any funds that are still unspent at year-end can then go towards other projects that are in the pipeline. So presumably, we've got a number of projects that were initially turned down that we may go back to. But if there is going to be some money unallocated, it's a very, very short space of time to then almost reopen the process, because there may be some organisations out there that have projects that could benefit from some of this money that potentially may arise. And it's going to be really difficult for them to then sort of comply with the timelines. And it would be an awful shame if we did anything that had to go back to government, because this money has been given to SK, to us as a district to spend on worthy projects in our area. Thank you.
Emma? Thank you. It's a good point. We won't be going back out to external applicants. We don't have time to do that. What we've identified is a number of schemes that have been funded by other means by this council, so things through the climate change reserves, for example, or other general fund contributions that would have met the UKSPF, or do meet the UKSPF criteria. And what the board has agreed is that they're comfortable with that list, and therefore they're happy for the Chief Exec and the Section 151 officers to use their delegated authority to allocate any underspends against those projects. That then obviously frees up general funds or climate change reserve to be spent on other things in future years that are not constrained by the same time constraints as the UKSPF fund. But we won't have time to go out to external recipients because there's just no time for them to properly spend the funds in the timescales. Thank you.
Did you want to come back, Mark?
Very quickly, Madam Chairman. So in that situation, if that did happen, then potentially the revenue underspend, the capital underspends we've just discussed in previous papers could potentially go up, because stuff that we'd previously badged to go out of either revenue or the capital might now be funded by the SPF fund. So it could be a movable feast. Thank you.
Mr. Wiles?
Yeah, the actual underspend won't differ. It's the financing that would change. So if we've got a capital expenditure item over here, we're currently saying that we're funding it from the climate change reserve. What we're saying in the new scenario potentially is that financing won't come from the reserve, it will come from UK Share Prosperity. But the expenditure will be the same. It's just the financing that would change.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Whilst welcoming the administration of the scheme, thanks very much for that, Councillor Knowles. Is it possible to show a by-ward spend for what has happened from UKSPF? I've been looking for it, but I can't see it. Have we got those figures somewhere, please?
It is part of the paperwork that is given to the UK Shared Prosperity group each time they meet. So it is available. Can you add anything to that, Councillor Knowles, at all, please?
No, I was just going to say the same, that they are published exactly where all the money has been spent and has been done on a regular basis over the last 3 years, and so it's available if you wish it for separately.
Thank you. If someone could get in touch and let me so I can have a look at that, please. Thank you.
Emma, could you do that, please? Thank you.
Sorry, I can absolutely do that. Obviously, if you recall at the last board meeting, we hadn't had that update, and I think it's only fair to redo that update once we've had that position. So I can share the last known position, but there will be another further one that needs to be done as we're approaching the closure of the programme. Thank you.
And just to add to that, I mean, I know there are other people that want to question. We are going to have an update of this in a future meeting. So once the process is closed, then obviously we'll have a closure detail. So we'll have even further details in the future. So, Councillor Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman. A question for Councillor Knowles. I think it's been answered, but just for my clarity, Philip, is it the case that if the brown signs for Stanford, just to pick an example at random, could be installed for rather less than the cost given by National Highways, the difference could easily be transferred to another project? Thank you.
In fact, yes, the answer is yes, it is going to be transferred to another project. Those projects have been identified, and some of them will be the projects that have been expected to be funded out of other sources of SKDC money, but they will be transferred to UKSPF money in order to make sure we use that money. So if people have spent less than was allocated, that's the money we are going to spend on other projects which have been identified. Yeah. We have to follow some rules. There are rules, very strict rules, but we are aware of what those rules are, and we're making sure that we are following the rules as carefully as possible. Yeah.
Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's just for clarification for members that they need to realise there's been immense work done here by the board and officers in particular to allocate all this money. Unfortunately, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Absolutely, and the process that has been developed is, one that has been running really well since I've been going to these meetings, which obviously is only latterly. So they are really chasing on these projects and helping the people that have requested the money as well. So well done to the team. Okay, Councillor Knight.
Thanks. Emma, just for clarity, some of these projects that have stalled, sorry, that's my phone, I think. Some of these projects that have stalled, is it that the organisations that are receiving them just haven't got their act into gear? Is it that there were unrealistic expectations to begin with? Or is it just it's sort of timeliness of, for example, if you're trying to book a kitchen refit, you can't get it done tomorrow. Is it just a natural time lag? Just to have an understanding as to how this has happened. Because if it is because the organisations concerned are not necessarily capable of delivering it, then it does raise a question as to the due diligence that we're doing before actually awarding these grants in the first place, if we're effectively locking up pots of money.
Thank you. Good question. I think the answer is probably all of the above. I don't think it's a particular due diligence issue in terms of the assessment. I'm aware of some bids that have come through with what would look like ample time to progress, but sadly where they've struggled with either contractors or obtaining the relevant quotes and things, the project's just stalled and unable to proceed. So there's probably all of the above answers in the mix somewhere along the line. What we are doing, for example, I know of one scheme that was approved relatively recently. It was match funded. We're able to fund and they are able to complete the elements that the UK SPF fund is match funding. The total project won't be complete, but that's fine. That works. So we are working with the applicants to understand if there's some of the money can be handed over, even if it's not the full grant award that they wanted originally. So I am confident that we're going to get through all of this. Thank you.
Thank you. We're moving on now. That report was only for noting. We are moving on to agenda item 13, Grant from Future High Streets Fund, the update. We do have a pink paper in this document, so obviously if anybody wants to discuss anything off that pink paper, we would need to go into closed session. But we'll have the report first and then we'll take it from there. So, Councillor Baxter, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. This report is also for noting and for offering comment. It's my pleasure to introduce this item, which gives progress on the Future High Street Fund. As you know, in 2021, the Council was awarded over £5.5 million in funding towards the Future High Street project. In addition, the Council has also added £379,000 in match funding. We've talked about this a lot over the last 18 months. I'm pleased to say that the public realm projects in the marketplace and the station approach have been delivered in accordance with Lincolnshire County Council and have now been completed. Hooray. The Council has also delivered the Conduit Lane public toilets, which were reopened after probably more than a decade, possibly nearly 2 decades, of being closed, and they've now been reopened in January 2025 and provide a facility hopefully safe with controlled access to them, but gives people the opportunity to use public toilets in the town centre. The upper floor grants programme is continuing and expected to deliver 22 new residential units on underutilised upper floor space in the town centre, and the details are on the pink paper. The council provided match funding which has supported the establishment of a Grantham Town Engagement Manager post and the creation of a town team, and I'm delighted that Mel has been able to take that post and is doing great things with it. We hope to extend that post slightly beyond what Future High Street Fund would have done with it. The town team has had 3 meetings and is providing invaluable feedback on the delivery of the action plan and the content of the action plan, which was approved by Cabinet last month. As you can see, there has been a significant underspend on the 2 public realm projects. This has been confirmed at nearly £900,000. Nearly £900,000 in my head is nearly £1 million. Other officers submitted a formal request to MHCLG, the government, to allow this to be used to complete additional activities next financial year. The Future High Street Fund Board has finalised a programme of additional works which includes enhancements to the power provision and street furniture in the marketplace. So hopefully that's a reduction in noisy generators so that you can enjoy whatever we're putting on in the marketplace in peace and quiet. Yes, I'm pleased to be able to confirm that MHCLG has confirmed that it's happy for us to do this with all contracts in place by the end of March. Excellent news for Grantham, and now means that the unspent funds will be spent on the town rather than being returned to the government. You're asked to note and comment on this report, and I welcome any thoughts and questions.
Councillor Sawyer.
This question sounds like a criticism, but it isn't at the moment. Concerning the public toilets, £190,000, yet houses are available in Grantham for less than that, and there are even a few in Stamford for less. Why did it cost so much?
Thank you. Rather than wax lyrical, I'd be grateful if we could refer to either Mr. Wiles or Giles.
I'll make a start. So basically, the specification was a comprehensive refit of the facility. It's sat redundant and underused for over 10 years, so it fallen into a high degree of disrepair. The funding that was made available through the Future High Street Fund Board was 190,000, and the specification was worked within that financial threshold that was granted, which involved a complete removal of the previous sanitary ware, tiles, flooring, ceilings, fascias, soffits, doors, security. The list was extensive and was complete remodernisation and refit out. If you've visited the facility, you'll be aware there is high security in that location now. There is a steel door which can only be accessed via a payment system, so that in itself was expensive because that's modern technology that's being used there, and the building itself has been brought up to modern standards. So that's what you get for 190,000. Thank you.
Did you want to come back?
What's the cost of a demolition and a rebuild looked at as an alternative?
That wasn't considered.
Councillor Whittington.
Yes, so thank you, Madam Chairman. My question is related to the refurbishment of the public conveyances. This matter was discussed last week. One of my residents did do a freedom of information request to the council for some details of the costs and various other questions, and got a blank, virtually a blank reply back. All the information has been redacted. And I know, we did raise this with Councillor Baxter. I know Councillor Baxter said that they were looking to see what information they could make available to the public, just to allay local concerns. And I'm just wondering if Councillor Baxter's got an update on that. So it's not meant in an aggressive way. It's just for information. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your lack of aggression. I agree. Yes, we've spoken about this. It is frustrating when you put in when one puts in a freedom of information request and only gets a kind of figure back that was published in the media. I haven't got an update since last week, but I have asked officers to look to see what could be released in addition to what has been released. But I would say to your resident and anybody else to listen to the, can you call it a litany? To the list, to the itinerary of what we have spent. I don't know if you've got that written down in front of you, Mr. Wells, but it's not just a straightforward rejig the plumbing and put a door access code on it. It's a comprehensive overhaul, and I know that everything seems to be very expensive in local government. We can't do things. We can't just go to Jewson's and get the materials and fit it ourselves, or it has to be up to standard. And I'm as frustrated with the cost as anybody else. However, we've got the facility that was promised.
Mr. Wiles, did you want to come back on that?
Just ready to say that the information that has been released into public domain has been verified by our data protection officer. Clearly it's commercially sensitive information, so what was being asked for would go far beyond what's reasonable in the public domain, because it's obviously prices put in by a contractor. That contractor works in a commercial environment. It would not be appropriate for us to reveal on their behalf all the finite minutiae of how they've arrived at their costings for the refurbishment. So it has been verified independently. We've released what we feel is appropriate within the rules and the law regarding freedom of information requirements, so we're unable to release any further information beyond what's already been given. Thank you.
Councillor Baxter, thank you.
Thank you. I think that we should be able to go beyond what the law requires. I appreciate that we shouldn't be giving away whatever the contractor is spending on a tap or a toilet seat or whatever, but I think that within the scope of a £190,000 budget, we should be able to give a bit more breakdown as to how the money has been spent. I'm not promising that that's legally possible. If I'm told that it's legally impossible to break down that budget any further, then fine, but I think that there must be scope, with possibly with the permission of the provider, to give some kind of indication as to the general draw a pie chart of how the money was spent, generally speaking. I mean, when does it come into the public domain? When would we be allowed to look at the bill? Because people can come in and look at the invoices once a year anyway, can't they?
But with respect, they don't want to see the invoice, they want to see the forensic breakdown. My understanding is they want to see it in that level of detail. That would never be in the public domain through an invoice, because the invoice would be an amount as per the contract. I mean, with respect, it's not for us to second guess what the inquirer wants. What the inquirer asked for, we're unable to satisfy. Now, if they want to come back subsequently and go, okay, but within the broad parameters, what are the headings around pre-commencement, on-site, materials, then we can look at that again. But it's not for us to interpret what we think is appropriate for them, because we may not meet that need. So the response has gone back to the inquirer. If they want to come back with a subsequent question or a further investigation on it, then obviously our officers will look at it. But we have to work within the rules in which we're driven by. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whittington, perhaps you could go back to your resident and explain a little bit more detail and ask them if they want to come back on that at all. Okay, Councillor Turner, then Councillor Harrison, and then Councillor Green.
With regard to the redevelopment of the potentially 23 upper floor properties, do they then become, forgive me if it's a stupid question, council stock and count towards our housing target? Councillor Cleaver's shaking his head. And there's the second part. The second thing I wanted to ask was, who gets revenue from that then once they're refurbished and made residential? And the second part of the question is, how many different programmes are we driven by government how to spend it, and they're virtually telling us what to do and running us like a puppet estate? You know, we've got UK SPF going off, we've got this markets funding going off, government money's coming in, they tell us we have to spend it this way, that way. How much does that actually cost the council, do you reckon, in terms of extra officers we have to employ to carry out all these functions, whilst obviously welcoming the money?
Thank you, Councillor Turner. No question is stupid. Every question is valid, I feel. So please don't feel that. Who can help Councillor Turner with some of those questions? I think there was about 3 or 4 there.
Just to cover off the upper floors, they're not council housing stock, but obviously any new dwelling counts towards our government imposed targets on new homes.
Thank you. And to follow that up, these are privately owned premises where government money has been invested via SKDC to enhance the town centre. So, without going into the details of the pink paper, there are landowners and landlords within the town centre who have been encouraged by the public purse to make more out of the property that they have. Not for the first time, and some of those landowners and property owners have had significant investment from the public purse in the past. Still, as Councillor Cleaver says, it is making the town centre a more vibrant place, and it's giving people places to live. So generally, it's a good thing, and maybe it will encourage property owners and land agents and so on to do their own works as well as the town centre becomes more vibrant. And as I don't know if it's open yet, but the bookshop is about to open any time now, and we've got a destination bakery in the town centre, and we've got other restaurants and so on in the town centre, and I think the tide is lifting all the boats in the town centre. That's great. How many different pots are there that have got strings attached from the government? Not enough. I would rather have the money without the strings attached, so that we can spend it as we, the locally elected people, see fit to dish it out. But on the other hand, as you said, the money is welcome. We were hoping to get a pot called the Community Ownership Fund coming to South Kesteven, but the new government has knocked that on the head. So that we have had money from, I can't remember which agency of government, but we've done a lot of refurbishment at Grantham Mears Leisure Centre. We've done pool covers at more than one of the leisure centres through money that's come from government with strings attached. So I don't mind. You send it, we'll spend it, would be my message to government, but I would prefer that it didn't come with strings attached, so that we could use it even better than what it is. Does that answer the question?
Pretty well. The only bit that didn't get answered was what it costs us in extra funds for officers to administer all these different schemes. But it's irrelevant, I guess, because it's part of the total cost. But thank you very much for your comprehensive answer.
Emma, is that a reply to this question? Thank you.
Yes, it is, yeah. So in terms of both UKSPF and Future High Street funds, we're allowed to allocate a proportion of the costs awarded against the administration of the funds. So I can't guarantee nil spend to the cost to the council, but we have secured officer posts on a temporary basis that have been allocated to administering those funds, so the cost should be minimal. Just as an aside and further what Councillor Baxter was suggesting about public sector funds supporting private sector funds, just on those upper floor grants of the units that are coming back into place, the total funds that will have been public money basically will be about £500,000, but that's been match funded by about £1.9 million worth of private sector funding to support that. So the grant funding in this case has definitely kick-started that private sector funding. So I think there's a clear benefit there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. Not to harp on about it, but it might be an answer that will help. Along with what Councillor Whittington said, I was contacted by Mr Bennett and quite a few other people with queries about the toilets and the information that was returned to them, given the FOI. I think a lot of the confusion there is that people have heard the toilets were refurbished, and they look, as you say, I can go buy a toilet for £100 from B&Q. How come it's so? Even if we can't give them the actual figures, if the law won't permit us to give us the figures, why do we not give them a breakdown of the full amount of work that was undertaken? Roofing done, removal of stuff, the work to take to actually remove that stuff, and the cost of removing it, and a full breakdown of the work that was undertaken. Because I think the misconception is we've just gone into that building and put half a dozen new toilets in. So if we could go back and give them a full breakdown, the security doors, the new refit of the accessible toilet, the staff toilet, and everything else, and a full breakdown of that, the actual work done, then they can go away and say, oh, perhaps it is a bit more than we thought, you know.
Mr Wiles.
Yeah, I mean, without labouring the discussion, we responded to the inquiry. The inquiry wanted a scope of works. The inquiry wanted a copy of the contract. We responded to what the inquirer wanted. If the inquirer now says, actually, I don't need that level of detail, I just need a scope of works that was undertaken, then I would encourage that individual to contact the council again, and we can respond accordingly. It's not for us to interpret in a different way the actual question that's being asked of us. We can only respond to the question, and we have done within the law that we were able to. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a fair point. Sorry, Councillor Baxter, did you want to come back on that point? Because I don't really want to go on too much about this at the moment. So.
Yeah, I don't want to be in public disagreement with Mr Wiles, but the FOI has been responded to legally, properly, and everything else, and that resident can do what he likes. However, it seems to me that the committee is now asking for further details. So it might be that has got to be on pink paper, but personally, I think that we should release as much information as we can about this to the committee, and as much of that information as possible should be not on pink paper, but to be on white paper. We can't guess what people are up to when they submit freedom of information requests. I've submitted them. Councillor Green has submitted them. Who knows what information we were trying to glean? However, it's clear that the refurbishment of the toilets and the cost of them is something of public interest, and the committee is now asking for that. So I think we should respond to the committee's request.
Sorry, I wasn't aware the committee was asking. I thought there were individual questions being asked about an FOI inquiry.
Okay. We have Councillor Green and then Councillor Knight. Mr Whittington, did you want to clarify for your resident at all on this?
If I may, I'd be quite happy to make a proposal. I'm sure Councillor Harrison will be willing to second it. That this committee gets a detailed breakdown of the cost of these refurbishments. If it has to come on pink paper, fair enough. But I actually do think that we are expressing concerns about it. Thank you, Madam Chairman. So that's a proposal from myself. I'm looking for a second, and hopefully Councillor Harrison will second. Thank you.
Okay. So Councillor Whittington has proposed that. Councillor Harrison, did you want to second it? Can we take a vote on that, please? All those in favour? Those against? Abstention? Thank you. Okay, Councillor Green.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. On the loos, I would say, unfortunately, they do fail the sniff test in terms of the expense. I mean, certainly the point's already been made by Councillor Sawyer on house prices. I mean, the average house price in Grantham is 230k, and obviously the 190 is not that far below. And really, I think taking into account that gap there being quite narrow and people reflecting on it in their own lives as well, I mean, surely if we had a Doge-type organisation in the UK, this would be a red flag for that organisation as errant spending. But what I would also want to draw attention to is the fact that people aren't just spending a penny there. You know, we are charging an additional 20 for the privilege. And what is the anticipated income from that 20p? And what was the rationale for wanting to charge that also? And then just to move on to a separate topic slightly, I mean, I note that there's 114k for events. What consideration has been given to spending that in different ways that might have led to an enhanced return on investment? And I'm thinking, instead of one-off events, what about start-up grants, or what about subsidised business rates, or all free? So I'm just trying to unpick and understand the thinking for events only with that money. There may be other ways to generate a far higher bang for our buck when it comes to regeneration in that context. And finally, I note that there was a meeting of the town team on the 16th of January. Did the town council chairman attend that? Thank you.
Emma, can you come back on that at all, on the first 2 points anyway, or Councillor Baxter, either one?
Coming back first, I don't know how Councillor Green operates his sniff test. I hadn't realised he was a quantity surveyor, and if he's got skills available, then he might like to. I mean, we've spoken earlier about the lack of qualified property people. Then, if he's got the skills, then we'd welcome his application. So we've said that we're. I think that Councillor, I'm doing it to you now. Mr. Wiles has given a good list of why it has cost so much. If you distrust that list, then committee has asked for more information, and you'll get that more information. It's not as simple as buying a house. If we just buy a house and say, right, can the whole of Grantham please come in and nip in and use your loo? I don't think that's such a solution. As for the 20p entrance fee, I don't think that's extortionate, and the reason for it, as much as anything else, is to control entry into the property. People need to have either, is it Apple Pay or a credit card? They need some to show some kind of identity in order to go into the loo, and that we hope will prevent misuse of the facilities for nefarious reasons. Was there another question? Oh, you were saying something about £114,000 for events and whether or not that money could be spent differently. I mean, this is an issue that's going on, and we review how the money is being spent. However, we have got a programme of events, and we are hoping to build community by doing that. We're hoping to build footfall in the town centre and also build community, which is why we're working with communities to put those events on. As for the, I'm not sure if there was a chairman of the town council on the day in question. I know that the chair of the town council has recently resigned. I can't remember what date it was, but I suspect that on the date of the meeting there wasn't actually a chair of the town council, so that person couldn't attend. However, Councillor Harrison did attend, and he is most welcome to do so.
Do you want to come back on that?
I suppose then, if that role, the town council chairmanship, was vacant, I would then ask, in what capacity did Councillor Harrison attend that meeting? If it was just as a ward councillor, why could Councillor Bailey, equally for St Waltham's ward, not join? Thanks.
I would say because Councillor Harrison has the trust of the other members of the town team and most of the business community in the town centre, has been seen to be involved in town centre activities to a level that other councillors in Grantham town have not been able to show. I think that Councillor Harrison has some great ideas, and he shares them in a way that is accepted and respected by the business community in ways that other Grantham councillors are not.
Councillor Green.
Just to come back very briefly, I mean, it seems to me that there's a worrying imprecision on the eligibility for the town team. Thank you.
Emma, did you want to come back on to anything about the funding, the 114k? I think you said it was Councillor Green.
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to remind councillors that we debated and agreed through this committee last month, and then subsequently Cabinet, the action plan, and the 114 on events was part of that action plan programme. There is a series of events that have been planned, some have already been booked. It's quite an exciting plan, and I'm sure there'll be updates and can advise in due course what they are, and we're looking to finalise the last of the dates. But in addition, just as a reminder for the committee, what we talked about last time and what's been agreed is we are doing not just events, but we're also working with the markets. We've got a youth market booked, and we're putting some money in towards improvements and looking at the market study so that we can look at how that can be expanded. We've got engagement with the town team. We've got a marketing plan looking at how we're advertising various bits and pieces that are going on. But we're also looking at pop-up shops, so we've put some money aside for some of the pop-ups, which I think Councillor Green is what you were starting to touch on. Looking at a loyalty card scheme, lots and lots of other things that were in that action plan, and that's something obviously that we will build on as the town team, and feeds into it with their ideas as well to support us. We obviously are the decision-making body as to what actions we're doing, but it's not just events. There is that package, that wraparound that this committee scrutinised last month and Cabinet's now agreed. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Knight that would like to talk. I noticed you put your hand up, Councillor Harrison. Was that in reply to what Councillor Green was questioning?
Yes, Chair. I mean, with all due respect, what business is it of this committee of who's on the town team? If he's got a query with the town team, bring that up in the relevant place, not here. There is no obligation to be on the town team. You're requested to be on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Knight.
Yeah, I mean, I've disliked the whole concept of the town team from the beginning. I stick by that. Nothing more to say on it. I've just got a question specifically. It's related to this, and it's probably the best place for it. The vacant unit that we have in the cinema complex, obviously voids on the high street are arguably one of the worst things about a high street. It's all very well and good doing things. If you've got void shops, I think it's always very frustrating. We've got the empty property downstairs. I know we touched on this at the last meeting. I was just wondering if Councillor Cleaver had any update on filling that, because that would surely be an obvious place to have a pop-up shop of some description.
Yes, I'm happy to come back on that. I believe that the unit is going to be occupied very shortly. I'm not sure what the dates are when we expect it to actually be operational.
Yes, heads of terms are agreed. We're going to move into the fit-out phase with the tenant in due course. They're hoping to be operationally live by the autumn.
Let's come back on that.
Can you just give us an idea of what it is? Or is that all still confidential?
The unit or the operator? Food. Hospitality, that's a better word. Hospitality.
Okay. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. I guess as we've heard, obviously, I don't get the opportunity to be on either the Future High Street Board or the town teams. This is the only opportunity that I have to contribute to obviously something that happens in the ward that I represent. In the report, it talks about the 882,000 obviously kind of underspend, and it talks about kind of this programme which has been finalised by the board. I guess my question is, where is the detail? I'd love to understand what the board has identified as to how they're going to spend this money. Because obviously there's something in there that talks about the power provision. In the back of my mind, I'm going, are we going to go up and dig up the marketplace again? How much disruption are we going to cause, I guess, Grantham again? That's what I'm particularly worried about when I read that. But yeah, for me, I'm kind of looking for some detail as to what are the other, we've just talked about spending £190,000 on toilets, and we've got a budget here of £882,000 to spend. What are we planning to spend that money on? Thank you.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. With regard to the planters, we've tried to put the planters, arrange for planters in such a way as it won't disrupt events in the marketplace. I think previously in the marketplace we've had a situation where every time we want to put anything on, we've had to spend thousands of pounds in removing the furniture and the planting and such like, and taking it away and bringing it back every time. So we're trying to avoid that known problem. There will be some carefully laid out benches and planting and such like in the marketplace, which should only be removed, I believe, during the Mid-Lent Fair. The power provision is on existing buildings, I think, in all cases or in all but one case, and so it won't involve digging up the square again. I was worried about that at the time that we were digging up the square, but it will be accessible to people in the square, and we've tried to do it in the way that the sort of cables or leads would be the shortest possible distance. As for the rest of the money, I'd have to ask an officer to help me with where the gap is between the power provision and everything else.
Emma, did you want to come in?
Thank you. Absolutely. So we've had lots of discussions as part of the board, and we've explored a range of different options. We were constrained because we can't create entirely new projects. They've got to be firstly things that were achievable, so we've got to be in contract by the end of March, and they've also got to strictly relate to the project and the other works that were going on and in the area. But what we have managed to secure, in addition to the power and the street furniture in the marketplace, is some works to support the museum. In addition, some further enhancements for the market itself, looking at wayfinding as well, because that's really important to make sure people can navigate their way around the town centre and find sort of key locations. Also looking at some removable bollards at the Conduit Lane car park, which obviously supports those events that we will hold within the marketplace itself. And then some cultural quarter public realm improvements out here in terms of St Peter's Hill as well. So that's the list that the Government Office have supported us, and we are able to proceed, which is really positive news. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to come back, Councillor Bailey?
Just briefly, could that list be kind of issued to, I guess, this committee, and I guess this committee plus myself, and obviously what the kind of budget has been allocated to each of those items, so we could roughly know kind of where that money is being spent, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman. Just for context and a spot of information for Councillor Green, I've just found 27 houses for sale in Grantham, and by houses I'm excluding flats, apartments, maisonettes, shared ownership, retirement home and park homes. Each of the 27 is for sale for well under £190,000. So I just thought it was a point I'd like to make.
Thank you. Okay, I think we've had a full discussion on this, so this again is for noting. So we will now move on to agenda item 14, update on St Martin's Park. We had a full discussion on this at the last meeting where we had a presentation as well. So it's really going to be just a brief update as to where we are at the present time. From Debbie, I believe. Is it from you, Debbie, or is it from... Oh, no, Councillor Cleaver, beg your pardon.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. This is another update regarding the St Martin's Park project in Stamford. The committee have a short update report due to having a comprehensive presentation, as Chairman mentioned, at the end of last year. This report updates on those decisions made at full council. The sales contracts were exchanged in October 2024, and landowners and developers are working on the items that need to be finished before the sales contracts can be completed with the developers. As a recap, these are the removal of the last stockpile, the removal of the gas infrastructure from the site, as this is not required for the new development, and the largest piece of work, which is the removal of the overhead power lines from the site and the diversion of the electrical capacity under Barnack Road, under the railway, under the river, and connecting to Cherry Holt Lane. Meetings with National Grid are regularly taking place with officers and developers. All works are due to be finished this year so that the council can complete on the sale of our site with the developers. Since the report was published, I can also update the committee that the 3 reserved matters applications from the 3 developers were submitted last week to us as the local planning authority, and these are in process of validation, which is another project milestone met due to the outline planning consent due to expire at the end of this month. This report is for the committee to note, but happy to take any questions, being mindful that we are an open session of the committee. Thank you.
Councillor Whittington.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman, and thanks for the update, Councillor Cleaver. My big concern around this is that potentially, we didn't get the brownfield land funds. there's potentially a slight issue with 3.3, but my concern is that potentially we're still facing potentially quite a large loss from this. And I know we're in open session. We can't sort of perhaps explore that too much detail at this stage without going into closed session, which I'd be loath, which I personally don't think we need to do. But just to raise my concerns that you know around that, because loss of that or unsuccessfully being that application, it does say potentially there may be another round of the fund. But at the moment, that's just causing a big risk alarm bell ringing in my brain around that. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Did you want to come back, Councillor Cleaver? Sorry.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Whittington. And you are, of course, quite right to voice those kind of concerns with this project, and that's very understandable. I would refer you back to the figures that were last given on big papers at full council, and you will be able to cross-reference the progress that we've reported today against the individual items that are in that breakdown, and that will give you an indication of the current level of financial risk and exposure that we have. Thank you.
Councillor Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman. 4 questions. I think the answers can be fairly short. First one, are we going to approach the Brownfield Land Release Fund again? Second one, what was the valuation of the 3 council-owned residential dwellings? Thirdly, am I right that SK has to pay for removing the 3rd stockpile? And from what Richard said, are we on the hook for the National Grid diversion of the power cables?
Thank you. I'll try and remember all of those. Yes, we will be applying for the Brownfield site. No. Sorry. Oh, I can't comment on the valuation of the properties. The stockpiles are not going to be removed at our expense, or should not cost the council anything. We are taking measures to ensure that that is not the case, and it shouldn't be the case. And as for National Grid, no, we're not on the hook. We are not on the hook. Those costs of diversion are included within the contracts that have been signed. As of course they need to be, because it's a pretty major exercise, as I think you probably picked up from what I said. A major undergrounding of quite a long length of overground cables, but they will actually be undergrounded all the way across to the Cherry Holt Lane substation. So they're not just across the site, but actually they will remove a small scar from the Stamford landscape.
Quick comment, Chairman, if I may. Sorry, Richard, there's one more. Can you clarify final demolition completion date?
I can't. That's a matter for the new owners of that part of the site. I have no information at the moment, thank you, but we can always ask them.
Thank you, everybody. So that report was also for noting. So we move on now to the work programme. So for May, and on that one we have an update on the Turnpike Depot, update on East Midlands Building Consultancy, which it will come from Emma, the Economic Development Strategy update. We'll have an update on the future funding from UK SPF and a closure report from the UK SPF, and also the 6th monthly update from the Marketplace Footfall report from Mel Brown. James, did you want to come in at that point?
Just very quickly, Chairman, just to reassure members that work won't stop in mid-May. There will be reports scheduled in for the rest of the year. The draft dates have now been circulated to all members, and I've had some responses, so I can start putting draft committee dates in calendars now just as a guide. And then as a team we will go through and look to see what items from the previous year are likely to be regular updates and therefore need putting in the work programme for next year. So hopefully at their meeting in May, members will see a more complete programme as much as we can do for the rest of the year. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Councillor Whittington.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. when do we think we will get the first look at this year's financial outturn? I'm guessing May might be too early because she's still be finalising accounts, but I'm just wondering how roughly when we could receive an update on the outturn. Thank you.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. I'm not an accountant, but I understand that these things take some time to put together. Usually it arrives in June or July. So looking at Mr. Wiles, June or July?
I think we've moved it to early July from on the draft, late July-ish. Not June, unfortunately, because I'm on holiday.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody else have anything that needs to go on the work programme at all in the future? No. Once we get the new dates, yes, I can see your hand, Matt. Once we get the new dates, then obviously, if there's anything else, like James says, then those things will be put onto those programmes. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chairman. Something that I mentioned at the Culture and Leisure, obviously, which was out of their remit, was around, obviously, review of the market fees. I guess much like Councillor Cleaver has done when he's reviewed the parking kind of charges across the district, it would, I think, be useful to obviously do, now that we've kind of got that process out the way, the fees and charges, ready for next year, do a review as to kind of how our market fees kind of compare to obviously neighbouring districts, in particular kind of comparing Grantham to Sleaford, for example, I think might help us to kind of review those fees to see if they are kind of competitive in order to maybe draw some traders into Grantham. But yeah, I kind of was hoping that this could be put on the agenda, maybe not for May, but obviously something there that could be looked at over the next kind of 6 months in preparation for maybe something that could be changed in the fees and charges of next year, if that's supported. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Wiles.
It's just ready to say, but slightly linked to that, is there's a commitment to review the fees and charge policy of the council. It came out of a recent internal audit finding, so that proposed new policy would come through this committee anyway, and that's an opportunity for members to have a discussion about which fees and charges they feel appropriate in terms of either cost recovery or to spearhead a corporate plan aim or an ambition. So I think that's the opportunity for that proposal to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Baxter.
Just to come back on that, obviously members can do their own research into how much fees are charged at other markets, but I would say, have you been to Sleaford Market recently? Grantham is worth a lot more in terms of footfall and so on. I went to Sleaford lately and walked through it doesn't take very long to walk through Sleaford Market.
Councillor Bailey, have you been to Sleaford recently?
Yeah, I actually went there at Christmas and obviously saw their Christmas market and obviously saw how that compared to Grantham's Christmas market. I'm not going to tell you which one I thought was better and get drawn into that, but yeah, you know, it's just an observation that their fees are considerably cheaper than Grantham, and it's just kind of, you know, in order to maybe boost new traders and attract them in, maybe a reduction in fees is something that could be looked at. Like I said, it's just something that maybe we could review. Thank you.
Something we will look at as regards to that, as Mr. Wiles said, once we get that policy. Councillor Turner, then Councillor Harrison.
I don't think Sleaford's a fair comparison because there's been major redevelopment in the town centre in Sleaford where they're closed all the parking, so you can't park in Sleaford town centre. So whatever the market looks like at the moment isn't going to be what it looks like in the future. But it is worth considering doing a scope of other Lincolnshire market towns in total. But we can't just go, oh, this one's better, because there might be extenuating circumstances why market stalls cost less in Sleaford at the moment. One of those reasons is the town council has virtually destroyed the marketplace, so they can't charge much money for it because there isn't much football. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you. Just to echo what Councillor Murray said, we're comparing apples and pears here. You've got to compare like for like. You know, we pay an extortionate fee, in my opinion, to have the market there. Councillor Bailey is more than welcome to come and join me. I've actually actively went out and got the crafters to join our market. I'm actively pursuing now antiquers. You know, this is what we're there as councillors to do, to go out there, not sit there and try and knock a quid off a market stall here and there, but do some actual work.
Thank you, everybody. I think it's been a really useful meeting, and it is 12 o'clock, and I will now declare the meeting closed. Thank you all for attending.